Hi, it's Nicole from Frost Yarn, and today I wanted to talk about the video education series on YouTube and continuing to make videos. So I was using Patreon, and for various reasons, it wasn't the right fit for what I wanted to do. It had a lot to do with shipping issues and back-end stuff, but I have a ton of dye videos that I still want to shoot and release, and I have already bought the whole line from Dharma, the whole line from Jacquard, and the whole line from Prochem, as well as other MXDX dyes for cotton and bamboo and other cellulose stuff, and a ton of videos that I will tell you about that are still needing to be shot and released. So I thought this might be an interesting way. We'll see if it works. If you want to back any of the videos, it's like the cost of a cup of coffee. And that allows me to spend days shooting and editing and all that kind of stuff so that you have a one-stop resource, A to Z, how to dye yarn, fiber, clean it, carding videos, spinning videos. So I'm going to read you some of the things that I'm hoping to fundraise through this platform. So the difference between reds, hot pink, black, and turquoise across all major brands, those are the most troublesome colors, meaning bleeding, separating, gelling, caking, striking weird, etc. So that would be really important information. Who makes the best on the market of those colors? Because those are the most troublesome. Then a superwash versus non-superwash identical dye application test, just to show the differences and also show a color absorption on superwash versus non-superwash and how to get the same effect. And then I have all the fiber for this already. Dye tests on Merino, BFL, Polworth, Targhee, and other major breeds. I think I have Cheviot and also, I'm forgetting the name of it, Pregnancy Brain. But anyway, to do an identical dye batch on every type of fiber that you can get commercially, that I can get my hands on, that you can get your hands on, not crazy breeds, but like the normal staples, to show the difference in dye uptake and dye color, because depending on the breed of sheep, you're going to get a different, slightly different, sometimes color value results. So I think that would be good. How to kettle dye in stages. So this would be probably one of the more labor intensive videos because I do my own kettle dyeing in stages. So like I'll add color by color, and then I'll go in with syringes and pipettes and peel the skeins apart and look for white patches, flip them over after all the dye is exhausted, do the back, and then usually a third process, I'll spin out the excess water, speckle them, and then steam them. So a really complicated, nuanced, complex yarn, not just a single slap pot, you know, dump the dye on top and hope for the best with white patches on the back, but like the real full way I teach it in class, but on video. Full triad dyeing from primary. So this is something I've wanted to do for a really long time, where I basically have, you know, your red / fuchsia, yellow, and blue, and then like 10 different values. And as they go into one another, and then toning colors against their opposites. So that I think would be really fun to show people how to do triad dyeing. And then I want to do a dye test hour by hour for maximum absorption on cotton and bamboo, because Dharma says 12 hours. I have another book that says 36. So where's the sweet spot? Because we all know when you dye bamboo and cotton, the rinsing and the rinsing and the rinsing, so you're like puking dye. So how do we get the maximum amount of dye to absorb onto the yarn with a minimal amount of rinse? So I want to do an hour by hour rinse comparison. So starting at 12 and going up to 36, which of course is labor intensive and time consuming. Testing, this is really important to just for my own, because I know the answer to this, but I want you to see this. So in true experiment style, I want to test all major brands of black dye for light fastness, wash fastness, solubility, and performance, along with determining what component colors it breaks into, if at all. For example, Jacquard is very brown. Dharma has a purple black, and kind of a muddy grayish blue black. And then I personally like Prochem's jet black. But anyhow, I want to show the differences, and at different, like 1% black dye is not going to look black, but what color is it, right? So going into that, what's the difference between just shearing down your black to make a gray, which some dyers do, versus using pre-milled gray dyes like silver from Dharma, platinum from Dharma, charcoal from ProChem. So what's the difference between optically, right? What they look like side by side, 1%, 2%, 3%, 4% black across all brands, and then compare that to pre-milled silver and gray dye, which I personally use because I think that the black dye, when it's sheared down, looks really muddy and it's not clean. It's not a pretty look, but that's just me. So that I think is worth doing. Toning our colors against their opposite masterclass. So how, if you want to take, say violet and put just a tiny bit of true primary yellow, you're going to get such rich, interesting, unique colors, but it can also go really bad. And you can get these like grayish, greenish, or weird maroons that you wouldn't normally see or want to work with, or I wouldn't, I guess I'm picky. So I tone my colors a lot. It's a separate process where I'll do, one example, 4.5% or 5%, the brightest red you can get, which I think is bright red from ProChem. And then in a second process, I will use either Cabernet, or I can tone it against a green. There's different ways. So I want to show these shade shifting techniques that I've developed over time that I think yield really fun results if you're tired of just using the standard colors that come from the dye lines. There's more. I want to do more carding videos, really get in depth on how to make the prettiest gradients and ombres and how to do a multi-layered, multicolored bat that doesn't look like clown barf when you go to spin it up, because we've all bought a pretty bat that looks like shit when you spin it. So I feel like I've found some ways to avoid that. Dye basics. This should have been at the top, but like what a mordant is, how they work, a difference between using, citric acid, which is a fixative, not a mordant, but we'll just say it's a mordant, versus vinegar. So cross comparing those results, as well as soda ash for your cellulose fibers, what pH they need to be at, testing them at too low of a pH or too high of a pH to show what range you get a bleed, what range you get good color fastness, light fastness, and at what range you're kind of toasting the fiber because you've put too much mordant in your dye bath. So that I think is probably one of the most important ones. And then of course, the difference between kettle dyeing your roving and directly applying the dye in your roving. So in the can, I already have 2 videos shot that I'm going to hopefully be able to upload and edit today. And if you want to be a part of this, sharing dye education freely for the cost of a cup of coffee and investing, what I feel is it's investing in the next generation of dyers, because not everyone has $500 or $300 to take a dye class, or they, like me, you buy the dye books and they don't really make sense, or the tutorials and techniques are very outdated, or they're not giving you clear direction on how to get a modern looking, like a pretty skein that you would see at a yarn shop that would sell out over and over and over again. Because I think a lot of the dye manufacturers, they have rainbow paint your skein tutorials, but they're shitty. So that's what my goal is. If you want to join me in this, I hope you do. So that's just some of what I want to film. And of course, for the people that back me, you guys get to direct where we go next and explore new stuff. So I hope you join me. The link for my Ko-Fi account will be in the description below, but it's ko-fi.com/frostyarn. Thanks again, guys.